How's it going, everybody? This is Danny Zavala with Tread Lightly Talks. I have Cosme Hernandez, founder and CEO of Tiny House Cribs. Cosme, so happy to have you on the show. I got to start this interview off with what motivated you to start Tiny House Cribs. By the way, I love the name. It kind of reminds me of MTV Cribs, and I like it, digging it.
Great. Well, thank you, Daniel, for having me, and I appreciate it. So the name actually came very similar to that. Obviously, there was me being from California, there was a large population of people who were attracted to this lifestyle, which was the MTV show, MTV Cribs show. So a lot of people started dreaming on what their lives could be like from those rich and famous celebrities and whatnot. So we wanted to create a brand that people would actually see tiny homes as being as an attractive way of housing and design and lifestyle. So we're trying to compete against the MTV Cribs, which is the big mansion, right? The big lots, really nice landscaping, and all those expensive chandeliers and all that. With tiny homes, obviously, tiny homes became a very popular concept on national television, and quite frankly, worldwide. There's a very big TV networks on different parts of the world that have a lot of views and attention for people seeking to know about this lifestyle, and for those design and artistic folks, the design concept of this, and for those environmental folks, really the sustainability and kind of the green component of having a small building versus a big building.
Yeah, I love how you compared it to the MTV Cribs, because I was totally up. I grew up in that era where, you clicked on MTV and you have these big giant mansions, and it's really cool how now we're in a different era, different decade where sustainability is a large component, and that's why we thought it was so compatible with what we're doing with Sustainable Wenatchee, because there is a large sustainability component, which we'll get into it. And you kind of already touched base on this, but give us a snippet about you, man. Like, where were you born? Where were you raised? You mentioned Cali. How long you've been here in the Valley?
Yeah, born and raised in Visalia, California, which is between kind of San Francisco and LA, kind of right in the middle there. Born and raised there up until the age of 14. Went off, lived on my own. There was a lot of gang activity, a lot of violence, drugs, criminal activity. So I decided to move away from that life, and just seeking kind of a new beginning, a new life, a safer life, and trying to figure out what I want to do in life. Made my way to Oregon for a couple of years, went back to California, figured out a way to graduate high school, went off to college for a couple of years. After the third year didn't work out, I unfortunately embarked upon about $80,000 in student loan debt. And really, when I was called into the financial aid office at that university I was attending, they said I needed more funds to finish off my university studies. And from after career searching and talking and interviewing folks, I studied criminal justice administration at National University in San Diego. And I found from speaking to career folks that I was forecasted to make about $40,000 to $45,000 a year starting off in my profession. And I was looking and calculating that with 80, and if I were to finish off college, close to $100,000 in student loan debt. So that really didn't calculate in my books. So I ended up dropping out the third year, and I was really trying to figure out how the hell am I going to get rid of all this student loan debt as fast as possible. So I was introduced to a bunch of business people with different philosophies, and then in the midst of all that, trying to get my life together and generate income and learn about entrepreneurship. I ended up in the state of Washington. I moved here about, I think, 2016, I believe. I moved here, started from zero. Didn't have a car of my own, and met some people here. Was introduced to the tiny house concept just on YouTube. I didn't have it. I didn't have cable TV or anything. I just had free Wi-Fi at the time. So I was introduced to tiny homes on YouTube. Kind of got really attracted to that concept about other folks who had student loan debt, paying off their student loans by living small and minimal. So I was kind of looking and searching for ways for myself to build myself a tiny house. And then from there, a lot of folks, I had about $3,000 or $4,000 into my own project, from education to buying tools, blah, blah, blah. And then I ran out of money essentially for my own project, and I had a bunch of people locally who were saying, hey, I really, I see that you're really obsessed and you're really wanting to move forward with this whole tiny house thing. Would you mind making me one also? And at that point, I didn't really have that business mindset of this concept. I was just personally concerned about my own self, my finances, and really trying to get rid of the student loan debt as soon as possible. And then something clicked in my head of, I had 3 or 4 people just approach me and said, hey, if you're building one for yourself, build me one too. I kind of saw this business opportunity because I had already a demand of people wanting to buy the product I wasn't even selling. And then I started actually promoting the brand Tiny House Cribs. The state of Washington called me saying, hey, it looks like you're promoting this company. We'd like to know more. And then they hit me with all these regulations that I needed to run a manufacturing operation, from having a storefront, being open Monday through Friday, having overhead, at least 1 employee on site to be able to take in just walk-ins and stuff like that. So I was hit with all this stuff, and I didn't have the resources for any of that startup stuff. So I partnered up with an organization here, a construction company locally in Wenatchee, to be able to launch the actual tiny house company. So we started a pilot program. We did 3 tiny house designs on wheels. We built a couple. We sold a few, and in the midst of all that, there was no actual law that clearly defined what a tiny house was or is in the state of Washington. So when the potential customers wanted to come by and say, hey, we really like this tiny house idea, would you like, I would like to hire you to make me one. I want it like this design, this concept. I don't want to spend more than this amount of money. When they go to their city or county, wherever they have their property, they were told that unfortunately, because there was no legal definition of a tiny house, you can't put it on your property and use it legally as an actual home. So we were faced with all that. So we ended up having our legal team figure out how can we possibly work with government so they can legalize and create a legal definition of what a tiny house is. And we ended up going all the way. So we ended up basically writing that with the help of our legal team. We worked with the state of Washington, senators, congressmen, and then we went back and forth to Olympia. We ended up passing what is now the Tiny House RCW. So I was out there, and you guys can watch these videos. They went viral within our state. I was out there shaking the hands of Governor Inslee when he signed the tiny house law, and so we were pretty proud about that. Actually, Washington State was the first state who actually got the government to approve that tiny homes are actual homes, and pretty much that was a pretty big success in the industry. So we were big pioneers of that. So we get calls all over the country of companies and governments trying to do similar things, just trying to figure out how we did it as a as a research study. So that's pretty much in a nutshell kind of what we've been doing. We have customers that have our tiny homes in Lake Wenatchee. We have customers in Snoqualmie who have our tiny homes. We have people here, all over the valley here who have our products. And then right now the tiny house company is we've more than just building. We used to outsource our design services to third parties. Now we do tiny house designs in-house. We also provide the engineering services required by state law, so people can actually get certified tiny homes. So if a person like yourself, Daniel, that has a house out of Malaga, you have enough space in the backyard to put an additional home, you'll be able to legally, with your certified tiny house, put it in the backyard and rent it out, or having some additional family living on your property. So it's a really simple concept because it's portable. So you can have it there and you cannot have it there. So that was kind of the big thing about the on wheels component. By legal definition, a tiny house is just a home that is less than 400 square feet. It can be on a trailer, but it doesn't have to. So if you want to build a small normal house on your property, just on a normal foundation, that is also classified as a tiny home. Like I said, it can also be on a trailer, or it can be modular. Modular buildings are really not common in our valley. because it takes, I think the closest modular manufacturers on Idaho or something like that. So it takes them quite a bit of capital to transport the unit here and then crane it down onto the permanent foundation. So that's really common, but that isn't very lucrative in other parts of the country. So here in Washington, a lot of people are attracted to the on wheels, and especially Eastern Washington, because Eastern Washington has a problem with wildfires and natural disasters, floods and stuff like that. So during our process of legalizing tiny homes, in my public testimony to Congress was the following. In Eastern Washington, one of the biggest fears of our community here is our homes being burnt down or our properties being under fire by a wildfire. So it is very easy when your sheriff comes by and knocks on your door saying, hey, there's a fire nearby, we need you to evacuate. You can quickly connect your tiny home onto a vehicle, a truck, SUV, and be able to haul it off the property. And if the fire were to go through your property, you can still come back with your safe tiny home, put it back onto the property, and you're not homeless. We've seen it on and on every single year. When people's homes burn down, I see campsites, our state parks, our PUD parks, filled with temporary shelter for people who are unfortunately homeless because of a wildfire. So we want to work with our government, and that was part of the deal of if we can provide tiny house emergency housing for people who've been devastated by a natural disaster. So that's one of the biggest reasons why government helped us pass this tiny house law, because when you have a house on wheels and it's small and it's easier to transport than a single wide or a double wide. I have been to other states where they suffer from floods like Florida and Louisiana. I personally volunteered at the disaster response in Louisiana and Baton Rouge, and there were 60,000 homes underwater. The whole city was underwater, and they had all these, they called FEMA trailers, temporary housing on people's properties. And it took a lot of capital, taxpayer money, obviously, it took a lot of capital to bringing these really massive single wides to people's properties. So the transport, the building of those really massive single wides as temporary shelter was kind of a big expense. So taxpayers see that. So a tiny home, I mean, you can haul it with a normal pickup truck. You can get a bunch of volunteers that have pickup trucks to haul these units and just deploy them to devastated communities. So that's kind of a big thing, and that's why I think Eastern Washington is very attracted to tiny homes on wheels.
Wow, man, that is an amazing story. I just want to say that you touch base on pretty much everything sustainability wise, like socially, economically, environmentally. You hit all components. Socially, I just like your story. When you initially started, it's like you grew up in California. Socially, it wasn't sustainable, right? The path that you were going. And economically, when you went to school, you had all this debt and you're figuring out, all right, the economics of this don't work out. Like, how am I going to get out of this hole? So, you put pen to paper and you started working, and then all of a sudden started finding demand, which is cool. And it just happened to be through an environmentally sustainable practice, which is tiny homes, which is bridging the gap socially towards natural disasters. So, I mean, man, that's pretty impressive in the fact that you are a pioneer within Washington State, within the tiny home market and industry. You led that movement, which is pretty amazing. Like truly, I almost kind of get tingles just thinking about it, because just to come from basically nothing, no background, no experience within that industry, and to be the pioneer and the one that's leading that is really cool. And it sounds like you've made a big impact. Sounds like you've been a servant leader, doing some volunteer projects when people need it the most. So, man, you're high in my books. I'm really happy that you're on the show. And one of the things I wanted to hit is, sustainability is one of our biggest topics at Sustainable Wenatchee, but there's a huge sustainability component behind tiny homes, as far as, it's less of a footprint, which is more, or it's less materials. We're chopping down less trees.
Less carbon footprint. When I network with my Seattle folks, there's a bunch of organizations just really focusing on recycled, renewable, and a lot less materials. Obviously, when you're building a tiny home that's less than 400 square feet, that is more than half actually less than half of the materials of a normal home that's being built in today's society. A normal home right now is about 18 to 2,000 square feet. So when you bring it down to 400 square feet, you're using a lot less lumber, a lot less natural resources, and a lot less labor too, to be able to build such that. And that's kind of one of the biggest reasons why a lot of the people on the west side of the mountains call us, because they know that we're making a huge difference and being able to, not take down as many trees as if you would on a normal house built.
Yeah, most definitely. I think another thing too is I just think consumer products. So I just went through a move myself. I went from a much larger house, about 2,300 square feet, to now my current house, which is just shy of 1,400 square feet. And the amount of consumer products that you hold and you just hold on to for some reason is just astronomical. So, reducing the amount of square footage that you have for storage. I mean, the whole aspect of it, all the components behind a tiny home is sustainable. So yeah, I think that's awesome. And I'm just going to go to my last question.
Should push back now that you're talking about where you're at. Behind you, that was personally involved in that project, all those rocks behind you were actually rocks that were dug out of that property that you're in right now. Obviously, in that property, we made 5 affordable houses, and that retaining wall right behind there, like I said, it was all natural resources that was already there. So we didn't have to purchase a product. We didn't have to bring it in from somewhere else. It was all there. So we just moved it around and used it in a way that is functional for that community that you're in.
Awesome. I have a higher appreciation for this wall now. I have a sustainable wall. That's awesome. You're doing some great stuff. And I want to touch base on some of the upcoming projects that you're working on in the future. But one of the things I want to hit right now is, if somebody's interested in a tiny home, what are a few pointers that they should consider, or some things to maybe begin the process of a tiny home construction?
Yeah. So the biggest thing I tell folks is just education and soul searching. So by definition, it's just a little house with less than 400 square feet. That's really it. So the soul searching part is, do you need it on a trailer, or do you just want it built on a normal foundation? Do you have land? Do you don't have land? Are you currently a tenant or a property owner? So those are things that we need to identify in order to consult you what the best possible solution is for you when it comes to tiny living. Or I got some investors saying, hey, I want to do a bunch of small little houses and rent them out. I think it's sustainable, it's economical, right? We build a whole bunch of them, and we can, serve the community in that capacity also. So it's really soul searching what your objective is for housing. And then from there, once we figure out if you want us to design and build for your specific property on land, which is one process. It's just a normal build process there, from doing the design, getting a building permit, and then getting a contractor, whether ourselves or somebody else, to actually build a unit for you on your property. The other component is the manufacturing component, which is the on wheels. So if you've after you've done your soul searching and you want a tiny home on wheels on a trailer foundation, then there's a different process we have to go through. We have to go through the state of Washington. So we would design the tiny home on wheels. We would get all the permitting. We would get all the engineering that's required under state law. And then we figure out what the numbers are to actually build a unit for you. And then from there, you can take it with you wherever it is, your parents' backyard or your friend's backyard, or if you have there's popping up tiny house communities all over right now. There's developers who are investing in little plots of land that you can actually buy and house, so you can be the owner of your land and owner of your tiny house. So there's that concept. And then there's folks who want a tiny home in an ag environment. Maybe they work in ag and they want to just have their own private little home and still continue working in ag. So there's a lot of different things. So once we figure that out, from start to finish, the actual build is about 2.5 months. It comes with a bedroom, it comes with all the plumbing and electrical, everything moving ready. So whichever type of tiny home. And then and then we gotta figure out where the money's coming from. So whether most people aren't cash buyers, unfortunately, most people don't have $50,000 to $100,000 saved up. So we have to figure out depends on which tiny home you want, whether you want it on a permanent foundation or on wheels. You gotta figure out there's financing for each component. So it's a lot easier to get a normal construction loan for real estate, and it's a little bit more difficult to get one on a trailer foundation because it's a different type of housing. So you just got to figure out where that is, and then we connect you with the appropriate financing personnel to equip you with the information you need and run your information. And if you qualify, we'll run with the project. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I love how you talked about the financing aspect of it, just because, yeah, it is a costly project, and I love how you said soul searching. You know, just because there is such an emotional tie when you're buying a house, and you know, for most people, you're downgrading in square footage. So you got to find out what fits your soul, what you're looking for. I mean, it sounds like you already touched up on some of the upcoming projects that you're working on, as far as like partnering with some investors and doing some tiny lot homes. Is there anything else that you want to talk about your tiny house venture?
Yeah, so I own the tiny house company. I also own just a residential design company too, and I am partners with a development company. So we do a lot of housing developments, from building and selling to building and renting, and ultimately really providing housing for folks. And those who have housing and want to modify their current homes, we help them with a design service so they can get their permits and they can modify, improve their homes. And some people are into the house flipping business to improve their finances. Some people are just, you know, they grew up in a home for generations and they just need to upgrade the home just to keep it up to date. I mean, so people have different goals. So we help people with that. Right now, my calendar is full for the rest of the year. We got a lot of projects going on, from the tiny house company to helping people design their dreams. And we're building every day. We're building tiny homes. We're building townhomes. We're building affordable houses. We are getting ready to do a 13-lot subdivision here in East Wenatchee by the airport. And we're always looking for opportunities to increase the value, provide more value here for our community. We're a local business. Even though we have nationwide attention, I just do business mainly here in Washington. And for all my local development stuff, it's mainly here in the Wenatchee Valley. So if anybody wants to partner up in a development opportunity, you definitely reach out to me. We're doing townhomes, we're doing normal homes, we're doing small homes. We just finished doing that affordable housing project where you're currently at right now, and there was what we consider 5 affordable homes. Within 6 months, we were finished building, sustainable. We met all the energy codes that are put upon builders for under Washington state law for the energy efficiency of the homes. So they're good homes here, there where you're at. The retaining wall, like I said, it was all made out of good stuff. So projects like that is what we're into, and ultimately just really providing value to the marketplace.
And I could directly say that he's, Cosme has impacted my life in a positive way. Here I am with my sustainable wall that I had no idea about, but I'm also living in a house that's sustainable. So it's really cool. He's changing my life. So if you want to get a hold of Cosme, how do they get in contact with you? By cell phone, email?
The tiny house company is tinyhousecrib.com. The design company is hdraftinganddesign.com. Our office is just located here next to the mill off of those of you guys that live in the valley. Would be here 3537 Highway 97A in Wenatchee. So 3537 Highway 97A in Wenatchee. And you can reach out to me here at the office. In the marketplace, we have 2 websites running right now. And I'm pretty known here in the valley. So if you ever see me, holler.
All right. Well, Cosme Hernandez, CEO and founder of Tiny House Cribs. Thanks for joining. It was a pleasure. I feel like I learned so much. I feel like I could basically give a consultation now on tiny house from the beginning to the end. So hey, thanks for joining us, Cosme. I will put his email down below that we can get in contact with him. Thanks again. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Daniel.